set a scene. I'm a native Bangkok born who has lived and observed this metropolis for 2 decades. This is a place where the perception between foreigners and insiders varies quite a bit. From the outside view, it's a rich heritage city filled with the spirit of grandeur and tradition. From an insider like me, I perceive it as a beautiful chaos that reflects the idea of modernity, fast-paced, sometimes shallow, and easy for one to become unaware of the entropy that passes by day after day, only to find out that years of life have passed in this vibrant city, a paradise for some who have the means to spend, and a cage for most with dreams but unable to get there. Well, before this turned into a political and societal critic monologue, my idea is that Bangkok is a symbol of modernity that still connects with old world virtues. You can spot that through a day in the life of its people, the contrast between colonial architecture among 21st century buildings, or the way they dress. Just like any other metropolis that contains various generations within a city, you can see the norms of each generation through clothing. One glimpse of a man in an oversized t-shirt, leisure pants, and sneakers, and you can guess his generation C. And one glimpse of a man in a short-sleeved shirt, mid-waisted pleated trousers with poor break at the hem, and you can guess he's in his mid-60s or early 70s. The pain of being a man who appears to have a specific taste in classical things is finding a way to be one without standing too far out from others around you. And for 3 years since I fully embraced the way of life as a classic gentleman, I can firmly say that it's not an easy task. First, the term is often perceived as outdated in an age where every entity is equal. Second, the norms and virtues have begun to value style without substance, shallowness, and instant pleasure over the slow burn of experience. And last, the classic style is either judged as a costume for sacred events or too much for modernity. While those truths might sound disheartening, it turns out I can dress and live in this very attire you're seeing right now for 3 years, and perhaps until I die. Wearing a tailored jacket almost every time I step out the front door, leather footwear that has become my staple, and a standard of polish that has erased at leisure from my dictionary. But the deep desire and curiosity inside my soul have grown louder and louder each day since then. A desire to reclaim elegance in the modern world. From the starting point 3 years ago till now, it's like I absorbed, cultivated, and lived with classic virtue for my own sake and nothing more, which led to the dissonance between me and the environment around me. While the world is running without awareness, I choose to walk with presence. While the world clings to the shallowness of gratifying experience, I decide to look into the substance of them. And while the world leans toward the overly casual, I lean toward the standard of elegance. This contradiction, it has led me to a specific era of humanity, an era full of uncertainty in global political tensions, full of generational change and contrast, and an era that began to shift the entire norm of humanity. Sounds quite familiar to modern day, doesn't it? Yet this period, even though it had every reason to descend into chaos, to sacrifice the substance of life, and to let go of elegance, it still contained and held onto the last breath of all these classic virtues. That period is the mid-century. Back in the late 1940s to early 1960s, the whole world entered a period called the post-war era, a time when the peak of tension from World War II had passed and humanity was finally able to experience life once again. Though as you know, the tension simply changed form into the Cold War, which caused its own messes during that time. However, one crucial aspect of the post-World War II era, or the mid-century, is the idea of living the best out of life, a perspective that goes beyond just the cultural influence of the US particularly Hollywood, the gigantic entertainment tycoon that had played a major role in shaping societal norms since its birth. But when the post-war period came, from the late 1940s onward, a new undercurrent of power from the continent, whether from France or Italy, entered the scene of global culture and introduced elegance through many forms. The peak of haute couture from multiple legendary French designers whose works features in almost every big-budget Hollywood film during the 1950s to 60s, or the new wave cinema from French and Italian directors that challenged the tradition of filmmaking in their own distinct ways. These examples of cultural influence that spread globally were the first glimpses of how globalization could shape the world. And it's this exact dynamic during the mid-century that made the period so charming, even amid the tension of the Cold War and various issues of that time.
Now this is only a gag. I don't drink anymore. I freeze it now and I eat it like a popsicle.
In the US, with the rise of television, the popularity of evening social clubs, and the emergence of cultural icons, many unforgettable moments were born. Dean Martin in his slim peak lapel dinner jacket, crooning and enchanting audiences with his charm. Sinatra with his melancholic voice capturing the soul of a man. Even Hollywood beginnings to shoot outside its Los Angeles studios, introducing scenes set in the Riviera, Rome, and other enduring capitals. On the continental side, the idea of living a great life, treating it like an art, was reflected in Italian La Dolce Vita, which means the sweet life, and the French Art de Vivre, which means the art of living. This became cultural ideologies in how people during the mid-century approached life. Though if you look deeper into the root of these terms, especially La Dolce Vita, is actually derived from the film of the same name by Federico Fellini, and his true intention was rather sarcastic, criticizing the lifestyle of socialites instead of romanticizing it. However, the core idea of the mid-century ultimately leads to this: to enjoy life in the present, even when the world outside is full of chaotic mess. This is evident when we consider how people visualize the term mid-century. The rat-packed crooning in polished black tie over Las Vegas. Images of ladies and gentlemen dressed in elegant attire, riding Vespa across Rome. Business executive in slim-fit suits lounging in the grand hotel lobbies. Or icons like Alain Delon or Marcello Mastroianni wearing ivory or beige suits, waddling down the boulevards. And that led me to a curious thought. What about Bangkok during the mid-century? Because Bangkok, this very city I was born in and have lived in for decades, was also part of the cultural shifts during the post-war era. One crucial element was westernization, the agenda driven by the ruling class to encourage the local population to embrace Western culture. From values and lifestyles to the very clothes people wore, Bangkok was heavily influenced. And one influence Bangkok adopted, which turned out to be a statement of tropical elegance, though now rarely seen or remembered even among sartorialists who favored navy or charcoal suits, is the ivory suits. Half a century ago, this exact piece was favored by men in tropical regions. You could see it portrayed in the Riviera landscape or even Bangkok during the mid-century. The color ivory had become a symbol of elegance under the sun, a fabric that reflected a sense of leisure and appropriateness, where heat and humidity was second nature. This is confirmed by the popularity of the ivory dinner jacket, which was worn by many prominent figures in Bangkok during that era, even more so than a typical black one. And when you look at figures like Marcello Mastroianni, Alain Delon, or even fictional characters like 007, particularly in George Lazenby's less remembered performance, the idea of elegance through the ivory suit was repeatedly projected on screen during this period, which has led me to the thought: there's no garment that better symbolizes mid-century elegance, especially in tropical setting, than the ivory suit. It's a garment that reflects deliberation, the desire to stay in class even when the weather isn't exactly friendly, and the proof of putting intention into the act of dressing, all under the midday sun that beautifully touches and aligns with the bright light tone of an ivory jacket and trousers. It's the exact missing puzzle that has been lost along with elegance in this 21st century, and one that, at least in my way of life, needs to return. That led to the idea of commissioning my first made-to-measure suit. Yes, you heard it right. This ivory suit will be my very first proper made-to-measure. Not a dark navy, not a charcoal, but ivory, a color now often reserved only for grooms at outdoor weddings or the occasional dinner jacket. It will serve as a statement of elegance, a tangible reminder of how humanity once lived during the mid-century, even in this very metropolis called Bangkok. And if there's going to be an atelier that can craft this symbol of mid-century elegance into life, one that not only understands the technical know-how of tailoring, but contains the soul of continental elegance I so deeply admire from Fellini's films, it has to be this place called Sprezza, a tailoring house that knows the nuances and character of Italian tailoring to its very heart. There's a typical belief, or rather a norm, that whenever people, especially from the West, think of the sartorial scene or tailoring houses in Bangkok, three words usually come to mind: fast, cheap, bespoke. A suit you can measure, customize, and have in hand within a week. As someone who is deeply involved in the sartorial scene here, I must say, these custom tailoring services are just one part of a much bigger picture. First, yes, you can absolutely find those fast, cheap, bespoke tailoring houses around tourist attraction areas, and they actually deliver on what they promise if you're talking about speed and price. But the idea of bespoke, well, that part is far from the truth. The term bespoke has been diluted into just another marketing word used to enhance the perceived value of tailoring houses, not just in Bangkok, but all across the world. People assume that once a measurement is taken and a garment is made based on that, it's bespoke. But allow me to clarify what true bespoke really looks like. First, a bespoke garment must be created from a brand new pattern, drafted uniquely for each individual. That means whether it's a jacket, trousers, or a shirt, every inch must be built based on your body. In practical terms, a master tailor must draft a custom shape for each garment, creating a whole new pattern, not modifying an existing house block. Second, it must go through multiple fittings, including base, forward, and vinyl. This process alone can take anywhere from several months to over a year, depending on the house. Third, it must involve the full spectrum of craftsmanship, such as hand tailoring throughout almost every part of the garment, done by incredibly skillful artisans or even the master cutter themselves. Which brings me to this: fast, cheap, and bespoke. These three words simply cannot coexist, and Sprezza is one of the rare ateliers that truly understands how to craft garments with real integrity, which is why I call this commission made to measure. A process where the house adapts a measurement from a base pattern, the house block, to fit an individual. It's less complex, less demanding, yet still capable of achieving great fit and customization. This tailoring house, Sprezza, is located in the southern part of Bangkok, an independent store far from the chaos and bustle of the CBD. And the name Sprezza, well, it already hints at that Italiano flair, doesn't it? This place has been open for almost a decade now, arguably one of the earliest houses to emerge during Bangkok's new wave of sartorial revival. Around the late 2010s, a new interest in Italian soft tailoring began to quietly spread among connoisseurs here, and Sprezza was at the heart of it. The reason I walked into this place to commissioning my first made-to-measure suit to create a garment that symbolizes lost virtue, a piece of mid-century elegance, is because Sprezza embodies the very soul of continental elegance, whether through their in-house tailoring, which is deeply inspired by Italian traditions and crafted with proper know-how, or their curated selections from brands like Lubinacci. This atelier understands the nuance I was searching for. They gave me full confidence that Sprezza would be the perfect place to bring this vision to life. And I must say, disappointment was far from what happened. The initial image I had in my mind was of an icon like Gianni Agnelli, the Rake of Riviera, his favorite construction, a double-breasted 4-on-1 suit with wide peak lapels. That was a starting point. From there, I worked with Sprezza to find the right fabric, one that would deliver both aesthetic appeal and functional substance. Since this garment would represent tropical elegance, pure wool was the obvious choice. No silk or linen blends necessary. And when it's come to wool for tropical garments, high twist wool is always the top. It's a type of wool woven in a way that makes it breathable, more wrinkle resistant than finer wools, and offers a beautiful drape, especially for trousers. But then came a complication. High twist wool from English mills like Holland and Shirley, Standeven, or Huddersfield Fresco all have exceptional quality. But they're English. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but they lack the nonchalant flair of continental elegance that I crave. That's when Sprezza recommended a name I've never heard before, but one I won't forget anytime soon. Fratelli Daria di Delfino, from their Archivio 1903 series. It turned out to be perfect in texture, weight, and in that exact shade of ivory I have been seeking. It became the body of the garment. As for the other details, well, nothing short of a pure expression of continental excellence. The jacket made of full canvas construction, fully lined for polish, and softly padded shoulder to balance that effortless nonchalance with the structural presence of elegance. The trousers are lined with mid-century continental cuts, slightly tapered yet full in silhouette, double reverse pleats, and finish with a 1.75 cuff at the hem, paired with side adjusters and suspender buttons for a clean waistband. With these configurations, the vision of elegance had been set, one that aligns directly with the mid-century continental flair, while also nodding to the spirit of Bangkok. And after all the details were laid out, and of course the cost of $1,450, all I had to do was wait. Just a month and a half later, the piece was completed. And I must say, the gateway to the world of elegance has never felt clearer. Sipping tea in the drawing room, walking through the old town, or simply wearing it for the sake of appreciating the beauty of life. This piece was born to serve all those purposes and beyond. The first feeling of wearing it was like stepping into a Thai period drama my mother used to love to watching. It came with a surge of energy that was hard to attune to, even unfamiliar at first, because as you might guess, in terms of occasion, this garment doesn't quite fit any typical event. For a casual business meeting, you'll likely become the center of attention, perceived more as peacocking than projecting the intellectual side of capitalist world. For a wedding, well, if you're not the groom, you risk stealing all the attention and becoming the brightest man in the room, which goes against rule number 1 of being a wedding guest: never outshine a groom. Still, just like the gentleman of the mid-century approached it, this double-breasted ivory suit is not merely clothing for a specific occasion. It's a statement of deliberate living, a garment worn simply because one wants to enjoy life. Every time I wear it, it reminds me of the sweetness in life, an experience of pure joy and full presence. a daily reminder to live with intention. Whether I start the day working from a high-floor co-working space, sipping coffee at a hidden heritage cafe, reading Fitzgerald in the Colonial Architecture Library, or soaring across this vibrant city under sunlight that gorgeously dances across the every fabric, this suit gives me a cinematic experience every time I decide to put it on. A true gateway, or even a time machine, to witness the Dolce Vita of Metasecolo, the art revealed of Mille du Siècle. No matter how overly casual society has become, or how chaotic the metropolis may be, this is how elegance is meant to be found. And surely, there's much more to come.